This is Jonathan Bales, and I am going to discuss some of the weaknesses with a dollars per point value system. So right now we are looking at my Week 14 NFL projections. This concept really applies to any sport. With any daily fantasy sport, you are looking to create some sort of value system through which you can rank players and choose lineups. Dollars per point is probably the most popular. It's really easy to calculate. You're just taking a player's salary and dividing his projection into it. So if we look at Alex Smith here in week 14, we can look at his draft street salary, $12,275, and his projection on draft street, 17.76. We would just divide that into that salary to obtain his dollars per point. The lower the dollars per point, the better. And one of the things that dollars per point does is it artificially inflates the value of low priced players. So to see that, let's take a look at my top values for week 14. You can see a lot of guys who we know are going to have really cheap salaries. Geno Smith, Brian Leonard, Tyquan Underwood, Charles Clay. All of these guys that come near the top of the value reports here have a relatively low price salary, and we might or might not actually be able to use them in a given week. So one of the things that I recommend to do when looking at dollars per point is think about the probability of a player going off or meeting a certain threshold. So let's take an example. Let's say we are deciding between Tyquan Underwood, who would obviously be low priced, an elite guy like Demarius Thomas. So we have Underwood and Thomas as a pairing versus, we'll say, Marcus Colston and Deshaun Jackson. So two players who would likely fall between Thomas and Underwood in terms of salary. And for the sake of this argument, we will say that Underwood and Thomas together collectively have the same dollars per point value and the same total salary as Colston and Jackson. So in terms of a strict dollars per point, there would be no difference between them. But I think that there really is a difference between these two pairs when we start to look at the probability of them giving you meaningful points in week 14. So we'll say that Underwood has a 20% chance to meet a certain threshold. It doesn't matter what it is. We'll say 15 points on Draft Street. We'll say Demarius Thomas is at 80%. We'll say Colston is at 35% and Deshaun Jackson at 60%. So if we want to know the probability of both Tyquan Underwood and Demarius Thomas reaching that threshold, we would multiply those percentages and it would be 16%. We can do the same thing here for Colston and Deshaun, 35% times 60%, and it would be 21%. So despite having the exact same dollar per point value, despite having the exact same collective salary, Colston and Jackson, the two mid-tier players, make for a better pairing than Demarius Thomas and Tyquan Underwood. And I think that that's something that a traditional dollars per point calculation might not capture. Whereas when you're thinking about players in terms of probability, that's something that you can decipher.